everyone. So it's again me and Ananya on behalf of WASH, the Women's Alliance STEM and Humanities. And today with us we have Shriya. She's the podcast host of Almost Average. She's a part of various extracurriculars such as Project Empower, and she's currently a high schooler at Brookfield High School. So hi Shriya, we're so excited to have you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Okay, so we just wanted to ask you about some of your experiences as a woman pursuing STEM and also various other interdisciplinary fields, and just have a little open conversation about what it's like to be a student in this day and age. So our first question is, so you host the podcast Almost Average. As part of the podcast, I watched your most recent episode, which is about Pearl, and I saw that you guys are really interested in asking students about their experiences and getting to learn more. Why do you think this is an interesting topic to pursue in a podcast? What really brought you and your co-host to it?
So this was interviewing students was a part of our rebranding process, and before we started interviewing students, we talked a lot about recent news and new scientific discoveries and philosophy even sometimes. But then we changed it to kind of focusing on education, because I think we want to spread awareness about STEM education, and Pearl was talking about all her humanities things, and I'm pretty sure that you could have heard me making snarky comments about why STEM is better. And I think it was just, we want to connect with these students, and we want to see what do these students think, because they're the generation that we care about. What do they think about how teachers are doing their jobs? How is the workload, and how is the competition these days? Because that's another very important factor in school right now, is just that there's just insane competition for colleges. So I think we just wanted to learn more about what people our age think, and kind of give our opinion about it too.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, Ananya can attest to the fact that just as high schoolers, we definitely have seen an increase in all that just from the transition from middle to high school. So as the host of the podcast, what are some big lessons that you've learned from it? What are some big themes that you see, biggest issues in current high school life today?
Okay, so I think one thing that you could apply to podcasting, but also life in general, is that you need consistency. There was a time when we used to post every single weekend, and that was when we had the most listeners. But recently, because we have AP exams, we've kind of not been that consistent. And of course, our viewers have dropped, our listeners have dropped, everything. But we're definitely going to get back into it. And how does that apply to life? It's because you need to be consistent in the effort that you put towards your goals. If you're going to sit down one day, do everything that you want to do for your goals, and then the next day you just don't do it, then you're really not going to get anywhere towards your goals. It's important to have a consistent distribution of effort, and consistently being productive to work towards your goals, or consistently go to the gym if losing weight is your goal, and studying for an exam every day for a month, and not just the night before. So consistency is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned from podcasting, and I think that you could also apply to real life.
Yeah, one of my upperclassmen in my school once made this analogy where she said that you should treat your textbook like a relationship, not a hookup. It has to be long-term consistency. You can't just do a one-night stand and move on. It was really good
That's so true. Yeah.
So I also see that on a similar note to just learning more about high school life, you're also the CMO of Project Empower, and I saw that you guys created Illuminate, which is this database of extracurriculars. And overall, can you just tell me more about what Project Empower does? What brought you to it? What's your mission there?
So our mission at Project Empower is to create software-based solutions for student communities that are either first generation or low income. So the reason we created Illuminate is because we want all kinds of students to have access to opportunities like the extracurriculars that we have in our database. All the extracurriculars that we found, they can be sorted by grade and interest in major, and virtual or in person or anything. And we think that for college admissions, a lot of people miss out on a lot of opportunities just because maybe their parents couldn't provide certain resources, or their school couldn't provide certain resources. So we want to step in and be like, hey, this is what you can do. These are the opportunities that are available to you. And we just want to help empower them. That's the whole mission of Project Empower.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I'm just giving kids access to more resources. I mean, on that note, what advice would you have for students other than, seeking out your own resources, like the ones that you guys provide, for like people such as the members of Watch? How, if you're a young middle schooler or young high schooler, how is it approach just the field of extracurriculars in high school in general for them?
It's a good question. A lot of it is self-initiative. I think that school gives you what you need to do well, but to do great, you need to really have your own motivation and want to learn things outside school. So for me, one of the biggest things, like one of my biggest accomplishments would be learning Python during middle school. And it's helped me so much. It's opened up so many more opportunities for me. So I think taking initiative and learning things outside school. It doesn't even have to be an extracurricular, adding on to what you're learning during class. So like if you're taking biology, like in freshman year or sophomore year or something, do a little bit more research. Like if you're biology, for example, because I started with that, you could start learning about epigenetics. If you're doing chemistry, start learning like different notations for things. I think building onto knowledge that school gives you is definitely a big factor in the opportunities that you open up. And it doesn't have to be like cold calling professors, cold emailing professors for research internships, because I know a lot of people do that. That's not the only way they could get ahead. I think the knowledge that you build over time is so much more important than anything else, in my opinion. Just dedicating time after school to, work on yourself, work on something that you're interested in. And I think doing that can also really help you choose a major. Once you get to the application season, there's a lot of seniors that I know that have no idea what they want to do. And I think that exploring a lot of different topics starting in middle school could definitely make that decision way easier.
Yeah, that was a lot of really good advice. I definitely agree with that. Like learning skills outside of just what you're learning in school. That's a really good point. And I've seen that from my experience as well. So we're talking a bit about like your own experience with like biology and like science and like learning skills. And that kind of reminded me of the fact that you participated in ISSF. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that. ISEF. Oh my God, I cannot pronounce that.
You
ISEF.
could just call it ISAF. Yeah,
ISEF.
ISAF. You could just call it
ISEF.
ISAF. Yeah.
Sorry. That was kind of
You're good.
funny. So ISEF, can you tell us a bit more about your project if you're allowed to do that? What did you pursue? What general field, what advice do you have for anyone pursuing that sort of research?
Yeah, so this is actually something that happened really recently, but I've been doing the science fair since I was in eighth grade. You can start doing it in eighth grade depending on your like state laws or state rules, not laws. But I started doing the science fair in eighth grade, and over time I've learned more Python. And this year, again, my project was in Python. I partnered up with one of my closest friends from my school, and we created a not data frame. Uh, a framework for Park BD, Parkinson's disease, and we named it Park BD. So they'll be going to ISEF in like 20 days. So we're very excited.
Yeah, that's really soon. Yeah, and the project sounds like really interesting. I'm learning biology like myself. And just like hearing how you took ideas like, protein expression and how proteins are like expressed differently in different strains and actually create something real out of it. That's insane to me. Like I said kind of in earlier, how if for other people who are trying to like create their own research project, their own research question, what advice would you have for them?
Um, Part of it was a lot of practice. Like I didn't get to the ISEF level because the way it works is that you essentially have to place first in state to be able to go to ISEF. And I never got close to that until this year. And this is my fourth year doing it. So a lot of practice, a lot of practice. Talk to your science teachers. They will definitely, well, probably not definitely. Depending on the teacher, they'll be more than happy to help you with their projects, get you started. Even like come up with a research plan, even if you don't actually do it. The science teachers, they are like golden for these kind of projects. Like if you can find a mentor, just that. If you can find a good mentor that's like knowledgeable in the project that you're doing, the field that you're doing it in, and they're like generally like a good like uh, coach for these kind of things, then you're set. You do your project, you get a lot of help from them, but a lot of it you can't just like rely on them, obviously. So a lot of it is also, again, as I was saying before, self-learning. if I didn't learn Python in middle school, and this wasn't like a part of our curriculum or anything, I think one day someone was talking about it, like one of my cousin's dad was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I went home, and my dad bought me like an online course on Udemy or EDX or whatever online platforms there are, like an online course for Python, and I just sat like an hour a day and I worked on Python in 7th grade, I believe that was. And in 8th grade, I started doing my science fair project, and that's just how it happened. Like learning, building, trial and error. Because it took me 3 years, 3 years to do these kind of projects to eventually get to that place where I am right now. So a lot of it, you have to learn, you have to be willing to fail. Of course, I felt bad last year when I didn't make it to ISAF, but yeah, I did it again, and thank God I made it this year. But if I didn't make it this year, I would keep learning even more like algorithms and keep looking at projects from this year and then try again next year. So I think don't be afraid to fail, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Do your best, but have some guidance because as high schoolers, we can't do everything by ourselves.
I think the point that you bring up is really great about trying new things. How are you able to decide which areas you like to study more? Because I noticed that you said a lot about Python and all these like STEM related things. But I know like being someone who used to be conflicted between going to the STEM field or the humanities field, how were you able to narrow your interests to this field? And were there any points that you felt like switching majors?
That's a really good question. Ever since I was like really small, like in elementary school, I just knew that I would like math and science more than English and history. And I think it's because in math, you have like a definite correct answer. And you can, like, the work that you do makes sense. Like, there are certain steps that you need to take to get to the end of a problem. And there's always a right or wrong answer. And in science, if you have like a question, you could do an experiment to get the right answer, to come to a conclusion. But in English and history, I feel like a lot of it is up to interpretation. And I didn't really like enjoy that part. I like having like very specific instructions and doing specific things to get to a known like conclusion. So I knew that I wanted to go into STEM, but it really like solidified for me that I wanted to do computer science again when I started doing the science fair because every year there's always something new to learn. And just the fact that there's so much possible with computer science, like all the apps that we have and all the websites and all the AI stuff that's going on, like ChatGPT, like that's like really cool. And that's definitely where I see myself in the future. So yeah.
I think it's really great that you were able to find what you were most interested in, especially in computer science. And I noticed that in college admissions, it's really hard being a woman in this kind of field. So, were there any disparities or obstacles that you faced in it?
Um, Not necessarily. It's just it's funny to see that you get a lot of respect for being a woman in STEM. Uh, there's like a whole section at my state awards just for women in STEM, and that's the award. And I appreciate that they have it, but I also like at some points, if I really thought about it, I'd be like, wait a minute, that's kind of offensive. Like, why do we need like a whole new like category for us? Like, it should be normal that we're here. But I think that they do that to encourage more women to do projects like this, do more research. But I remember the first time when I was thinking about it, I was like, that's kind of like offensive. Like, why do they need like a whole new category for us? Like, why don't they have like men in STEM awards too? Like, why do we need to be special like that? But then again, I was like, no, they're encouraging us, so it's fine. But I never really had like difficulties. I just think that there is a lot of support for women in STEM because of like all the awards that they offer. But I think like in my environment at least where I live, there isn't much like discrimination in that way.
That's a good point you bring up of seeing how there's like special awards for women. I think that's really interesting where it's just almost like not normalized yet. Um, Kind of on that note, I think I said that there's no discrimination. But would you say even with the lack of discrimination, is now discrimination it's in our environments where there's not that much they're more modernized and there's not that much stigma for women in STEM or other fields. Would you say the lack of stigma has equated to more girls pursuing this field, or is there something else still like holding a lot of people back?
Hmm. I definitely don't think that it's as equal as it should be. Like the difference between men and women in STEM, it's not like it's definitely not 50-50. I definitely think that there should be more women in STEM. And in terms of there not being like a stigma around it, yes, it has normalized the fact that over the years we've had more women in STEM, but there's just not enough. I think now instead of saying that there's not a lot of women in STEM, it needs to be changed to there needs to be like a more equal like approach. Motivation is really like in the person, like you can't like force people to go into STEM. Like you can't build in family in society from when they're little, because you can't just like put a girl in high school and be like, oh, you're going to college next year, you should go into STEM. Right? I think it should be encouraged like over a long period of time, and that needs to come from within as well. Because if you're a humanities person, you're not gonna just switch to STEM because everyone said that you should, or that just because a lot of people wouldn't care that I like humanities, so why should I go into STEM just to balance out men and women? Like I think a lot of it really comes from what you actually like, and we can't force people to like something. So I think motivation is like tricky in that sense, but I definitely don't think that a lot of people are less motivated. I think it's just that that's just how people are interested. Like that's just where their interest lies.
I think that's pretty interesting. It really depends on which field any individual may want to go into. So, is there any final advice that you would have for younger women aspiring to be in the STEM field or even in the humanities field, and any action that you think they should take even from a younger age?
Yeah, basically just the same things that I said before. I think learning things outside school is very, very important. Uh, the CMO thing that I do, I'm the chief marketing officer. That's definitely something that nobody from my school knows about. I haven't told them, like nobody knows about it. I think it's important to go and explore outside school, because now I have something, like I have an activity that no one else from my school would be doing, and that would like set me apart when it comes to college admissions times, right? And exploring outside school is like my number one thing that I'm going to advocate today. Number two is don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, that's how you learn. You need to learn from failure and mistakes in order to do well later. Um, Specifically for women, I just think don't take judgment from anyone. Whether you're in STEM or humanities, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. I think that you should definitely stick to your goals, do what your heart says, and don't care about what anyone else says. Like it's your life, and you should be in charge of the decisions. So if you see something on social media that makes you think, oh, maybe I should be this way, like no, like you're perfect, you're good. Do what you need to do.
Yeah, I love where you said the N word. You just don't care, because like I think one more thing, when you're in high school, especially when you're doing like extracurriculars, you in your head you're like, what if people judge me for this? What if like in the end, in 4 years' time, no one's gonna care? And I think that's just a really good point. But to end it off, I just add a little fun, quirky question to like, well, quirky's like, but a fun question just to end off the interview. So this is random, but if you could have any superpower, what superpower would it be? And with that, we'll just end off the interview with me and Ananya also giving an answer to that, I guess.
Oh, sounds good. If I had a superpower, what would it be?
Hmm.
I definitely think flying. I think I would want to be able to fly. I'm a person where I sometimes feel the need to be at different places at different times, just because I spread myself so thin. I think flying would make that so much easier. And I also really like watching the sunset. So like that's one of the things that I do every single day. Kind of missing it right now because it's like 7:30 and it's like happening out my window. I can see it. But that's what I do. I go outside, sit on my porch and watch the sunset happen every single day. It's like the one thing in my life that's consistent. Um so flying would make it really cool in the sense that I could go to like some mountain and watch the sunset from a mountain. Like the view from there would be crazy. It just adds like convenience to my life, if I were to be able to fly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like deadly afraid of heights, but I see where you are. What would yours be, Ananya? Your superpower?
Honestly, this is kind of weird, but I think I'd like to read people's minds, not just because I want to see what they think about
Same.
me, but because I really want to know like what my teachers think of me and like if they think I'm like over the top or if they think I like do too less. And I feel like it would make for really nice letters of rec.
I I love to mind read too, but just see what others think of me, not like my teachers. I don't care about my teachers.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You good.
I think like if you asked me a couple years ago, like when I was a freshman, I would probably say reading people's minds because I used to be so like self-conscious about what other people thought of me. But again, like now I'm just like whatever because there's like always something going on. You can't expect everyone that you know to like you. And you know why like we're in high school, you're probably never gonna see these people again once you graduate. So I don't know. I think it's cool that you guys like said that, but that's just like my thing. Cause like I wanted that at some point too.
Yeah, no, you're right. We need to like evolve from that meaning on Anya, but it's fine. So anyways, thank you so much for interviewing with us. And we just had a really fun time talking to you, and we can't wait for all you WASH students to see the great advice you left on them. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. No.
Hey everyone, so it's again me and Ananya on behalf of WASH, the Women's Alliance STEM and Humanities. And today with us we have Shriya. She's the podcast host of Almost Average. She's a part of various extracurriculars Project Empower, and she's currently a high schooler at